Hi, honey, how are you? Welcome back to the channel, or if you're new here, I'm Teknikolour. Right now, in my Legacy Challenge, we're living in Tartosa, the world that comes with my wedding stories, and my sim is desperately in need of more lots to visit in Tartosa, so I built Scorfino's Restaurant. Before we continue, though, I post lots of Sims 4 builds, so if you enjoy this, be sure to like and subscribe. You can also support me by using my EA creator code, Teknikolour, at checkout on the EA app. It gives a small commission at no extra cost to you and helps me keep creating content. If you remember a few weeks back, I posted a video of a Tartosa villa build for my Legacy Challenge. If you missed it, I'll link it in the description, but my current Legacy heir is living in Tartosa, on that lot, and there really aren't a ton of places here in this world for him to visit. Originally, when I was working on his house, I had a bunch of inspiration photos that I was using, and his house kind of turned into a combination of all of those. Well, there was one photo that I fell in love with and really wanted to build something using that as the main inspiration in the future. I'll put that photo on the screen here. I loved the entrance and wanted to see if I could do something in the game to mimic it. So I based the overall shape of the restaurant, or at least the front, off of this inspiration picture. I knew that I wanted an outside dining area and a sort of indoor-outdoor covered space, which is what kind of ends up leading into that outdoor space. Other than knowing that I wanted this sort of shape for the overall look of the restaurant, it took me some time to roof it. Obviously, I could take some cues from the photo inspiration, but that was still tricky to roof, especially not knowing what the other angles of the inspiration picture looked like. I had to guess in places and tweak things here and there. For me, when roofing a build gets like this, I get super frustrated with myself and I really struggle with not knowing how to make it work and why whatever I'm trying isn't working. Usually around this point, I'll call my boyfriend in for help because if I don't, I'll be here for hours. And that's even worse. For some reason, though, I was at total peace when I was working on this build. Roofing it did take some time, but I didn't feel aware of that while I was working on it. I just thoroughly had a really nice time working on this particular build, and I'm impressed with the finished result, so hopefully you'll like it too. Working on the exterior design was super fun too. I especially loved working on that little windowed sunroom sort of spot. I really liked that part of the inspiration picture and wanted to include it here, even though it definitely sticks out from the rest of the build. I loved how the windows looked, and we don't really have anything like that in The Sims where you can have a bit more variation with your windows while still keeping them cohesive. I mean, we do have some windows that you can do that, but sometimes size issues come into play or swatch compatibility, that sort of thing. Instead, I opted for a door and it looks so good here. I didn't particularly want to use a door, but I figured I'd be able to find a way to make it work by the end, and I'm really glad I just trusted myself and left the door and moved on with the intention of coming back to it. Now, it's probably one of my favorite parts of this build. For the most part, the exterior wall paint mimics what Caspian's villa looks like. The windows and archways are a bit similar too, since I did use a fair amount of For Rent in Riviera Retreat. In that covered area that leads to the outdoor space, I first tried using the window from Realm of Magic, the one that is the big circular window. I actually doubled it up because I didn't want one side to just have the circle. I wanted the ornamental piece at the bottom of both sides of the wall. I think it'd have been easy to get this to fit in just by using some of the wall plants or ivy decor items to wrap around it. However, I felt like it was just looking out into the open area behind the lot and not anything super visually appealing. So instead, I used the fireplace from Desert Luxe, which I do not believe will be functional since it's technically halfway through the wall, but you could probably add some debug fire items, like the flaming basketball from City Living if you wanted it to look like a lit fireplace. Plus, the fireplace has a shelf built in that does peek through the wall, so I decided just to decorate it. In Lovestruck, we received a lot of beautiful art, and one of those is this painting that I think is meant to look like the Lovestruck world. However, it reminds me so much of Porto Rosso, the setting of the Disney Pixar movie Luca, which I think was inspired by the Italian Riviera. That's also the inspiration for the name of our restaurant, Scorfano's Restaurant. I also tried to use the windows from Moschino on the diagonal section of the building, but they add in a rectangular section that wouldn't allow me to put both windows side by side. I don't really understand why diagonal walls sometimes, but not always, adjust the sizing and look of windows and doors. This also happens on the panel doors from Lovestruck, which I personally think is one of the most beautiful interior doors we have in the game. But they look horrible on diagonal walls. Instead, I opted for those tall and open for rent windows with the gold bars. For Rent is one of my favorite packs. I know that's kind of a controversial opinion, I think, but some swatches of the windows, like these with the gold bars, can just be really hard to blend in with the build. And I'm not entirely sure why. Maybe I'm the only one with this issue. My boyfriend also absolutely hates gold, and it's such a struggle to bring in any gold decor into our apartment. Like, we have gold lamps in this room, but I bought them before we lived together. And you might be able to see this golden whale tail behind me. We bought that together, and my Twitch community has commented on it before. Apparently, depending on how it's positioned, it just looks like a random horn-looking thing. It's a whale tail. However, something you might not know is that we actually have two of those. This tall bookcase behind me, that has another whale tail on top of it. And that one is more of a gray silver kind of color. Not entirely sure why they both have a metallic finish to them. This is only just occurring to me now, actually. But we both like a lot of nautical stuff, so it fits. This part of the build, the entryway, was my favorite part of the build to work on. Let me put the reference photo back up here for a moment, so you can see that there's a clear pathway to the entrance, but there's still all of this decor and seating around the path. Plus, there's this landscaping in the front that I absolutely wanted to include, and legitimately struggled with finding something in the game to give the same feeling. Originally, I had the pathway up on the foundation, like the rest of the building, and you can see that I tried a lot of different things to make it work. I think the issue is that there's limitations on what we can and can't do in the game. I think I wanted to have the foundation as the path and then use platforms directly next to it with fencing, and it just wasn't going to happen. So after quite a bit of adjusting and trying different things out, I decided to just use a flat pathway. And instead of having the stairs at the front of the path, I decided to have the stairs at the back. So there's a bit of a foundation extending from the front of the build with stairs down to the flat path. Honestly, that change, I think, fully changed the entire look of the build, and for the better. Any fencing I was using on the foundation just looked so tall and quite uninviting. Like, this is a restaurant that you're supposed to want to visit. It's meant to look romantic and beautiful and warm from the outside. You're not supposed to feel kind of nervous or uneasy walking up to it because the fence is too tall and you can't really see behind it. With it flattened, the fencing now feels more inviting, especially with all the greenery and flowers. It went from potentially a little creepy to something lush and beautiful. I think once I finished working on the entry, I sent a sneak peek to one of my friends, actually one of the two friends who were really pivotal to me becoming a simmer, because I was so proud of how it turned out. I like most of my builds, but some of them really end up sticking out to me as favorites. And this is definitely going to be one of my favorites. I hope you end up liking it as much as I do. Oh, this is actually kind of funny to me. So Get to Work was the first expansion pack released for The Sims 4. I didn't buy it until after I became an EA creator in late 2023. So in the grand scheme of things, I didn't really add it to my game until I had a ton of other packs. I think it just seemed like an older pack, and I thought it wasn't going to add much value to my game. I was so wrong, because now I end up using a lot of the items from here, more often than not. Plus, this is going to sound so crazy. The driving force that made me really want to buy Get to Work, like There was really only one particular item that I wanted from this pack, and was the only item that really made this pack worth it, at least from a build perspective, and my build perspective, just to be clear, was the fence for window shopping. You heard me correctly. The item I most wanted from this pack was fencing. But hear me out, hear me out. The fencing is kind of top tier because it's so low to the ground that your Sims can easily walk over it and on it. And therefore, it's such an easy thing to add to your builds to elevate the overall look. For instance, here it's kind of used as a border to separate the two different floorings. In my Legacy Sims Tartosa Villa build, I do the same thing by adding in a little decorative tiled rug area underneath the kitchen table that has a border around it using this fencing. Trust me, it's such a good item to use. Is it the only good item in Get to Work? No, of course not. But for baby builder tech, it was literally the item that I needed above all others. Aside from that, adding in the huge flower arrangements in each corner and then the standing planters with the benches in between them really helped to pull this spot together. The next step was to add to that little landscaped area in the very front of the lot. To do this, I used this debug rock item that I know we have from Horse Ranch, but I think I've seen in other packs, I think Enchanted by Nature, but I was previously only aware that it was in Horse Ranch. This item is so good because you can use it to add decorative borders around your landscaping with small rocks, and they're already in a curve, so it's easy to work with. Now, as for what to put in this landscaped area, I was unsure. I ended up going for things like cacti and similar plants and just adding to it until it felt full. It's definitely different from the inspiration, but I think this looks better, at least within the context of the game. After that, all I had to do was add to the front of the building itself. Originally, I was using those plants that I think are in both My Wedding Stories and Jungle Adventure. You can essentially tile them against a wall like creeping ivy. However, it's only in one color, and it just wasn't doing what I wanted it to. And it came out from the wall a fair amount, so we'd be losing space by using it. I opted to use the new wall items from Enchanted by Nature, and I think they work so much better here because they come in a larger variety of colors, and this particular swatch blends in with the rest of what I planned on using throughout the build itself. I did playtest it, and your sim should be able to get through the archway. But if you're getting a pathing error, just shift that top piece up a little bit until your sims can get through. For some reason, it worked perfectly the first time I tested it, and then I needed to adjust it again when I playtested at the end of the build, so not entirely sure what was happening there, but just shifting that item at the top of the arch fixed it. I also added in those floor-to-ceiling wall signs from the Bistro kit. I think technically they're supposed to be menus, but there's not a ton of text, so I am interpreting them more as signs welcoming you to the restaurant itself. In a little bit, I just add one of those standing signs that looks a bit more like a menu to sort of add just a little more context to the build. Here, however, is where I feel the entire building starts coming together in the way that the entry did. I started working on the little sunroom area, and since I used a door and not a window, I think it makes sense to have added a small outdoor space here. The outdoor space in the back is using the fencing from Businesses and Hobbies that has the twinkle lights around them. So I reused those here in the front since they matched the door I used, also from the same pack. Then I just added in some tables and chairs from My Wedding Stories to give this spot more of a purpose. But there's a catch. These chairs and the tables are really pretty, right? Not functional, not one bit. These are from Debug, and I feel like there's not really much in the game that looks like these, but I would use these if they functioned in way more builds. Before I went looking through the debug options from My Wedding Stories, I had never seen these, and it wasn't until I started playing with my sim in this world that I finally even noticed them. They definitely fade into the background, which was needed in this situation since your sims can't actually use them, but I wouldn't mind if we had functional versions. Then the windows took a bit for me to decide on. I mentioned earlier that I wanted to use the golden bar versions from For Rent, but they just really don't fit in on this build. The gold really stuck out, and not in a way that I wanted it to. I ended up using a combination of both My Wedding Stories windows and For Rent windows, but a completely different look. The For Rent ones that I chose instead were two different types, an open window with more of a wooden framing, and another also wood framed, but with stained glass. Plus, the colors matched the color scheme that I had been planning on using with the build, and worked well with the entrance already. So I just added those throughout. I almost never show the building of my bathrooms because I feel like they're kind of boring, but I am going to show you this one. We have these stalls from Businesses and Hobbies that I really wanted to use, but thought that I wouldn't be able to because I'm using those stained glass windows on the walls that the stalls would be on. But since they're stained glass, you can't actually see through them, and the stalls cover them. But you'd have no idea from either side. When I tell you I gasped when I realized, it doesn't even clip at all. Complete game changer, because I wasn't totally sure what I was going to do otherwise, especially because I didn't want to have to add in a ton of little stalls. I also added a large mirror above both of the sinks, but it clipped in with the faucet. So I did something I've never thought of doing before. I used those new like cement or concrete or whatever rectangles that came with the sleek bathroom kit and just put them behind the sinks. It brought the sinks themselves out further, which didn't cause any spacing issues, and it actually gave me more area to decorate, so I added some soaps and tissue boxes. I think this is also where I thought I might need a break, but I wanted to officially mark the lot as a restaurant and put in all of the requirements, so I wouldn't forget about them later. I never really know what to do with the host and waiter stands. And usually, whatever I choose ends up somehow breaking the restaurant in some way. But I think that's more of a dine-out issue than me, if I'm being honest. However, I really like how I place them here because the host stand is right off of the door, and the waiter stand is too, but it's a bit more hidden and makes this wall less awkward. I wanted a cute bar back for the bar area, and the only logical space I found to put the bar in was in the space between the kitchen and the sunroom. It's not the most ideal, or maybe it is, for this reason, since it's literally right in front of the bathrooms. But whatever, I think it works. As for the seating, I knew that I wanted something that felt like it matched the overall color scheme and also went with the existing bar. I actually took out and tried a few different options before settling on 2 tables for the interior, all using the same chairs. It's basically dark wood and red, which matches everything else, and the larger tables are pushed more off to the side, including with a small party room. The smaller tables, which are also mostly for couples, are closer to the entrance and bar. I think this might end up being a really great location for singles, couples, and families because there's enough variety. Plus, I decided that I was making this into an optional wedding venue. So the entire outdoor space is perfectly set up for a reception dinner if you'd prefer. I used tables and chairs from My Wedding Stories, as well as a piano and a dance floor. I think altogether, this space looks really beautiful and can work for either a restaurant or wedding venue. Switching to that sort of transitional space off of the main dining area and the outdoor dining area, I took a little bit of time trying to find seating that felt like it fit in with all of the others, and I think I made a pretty good selection. I think these are all from For Rent in this room, and then I paired them with the coffee tables from Growing Together. I always want to use this coffee table because I think it's really pretty and kind of cool with the wood and that sort of glass or acrylic or whatever it is spot in the center, sort of. I literally have no idea how to decorate with it usually, so I just switched to something else, but I really wanted to keep it here, and I'm glad that I did. At first, I tried adding in some candles, specifically the set of 3 from Love Struck, because I wanted them to add some symmetry to that little piece of the coffee table. It didn't look right to me, but this lantern and flowers that I switched to does, and I think I might have finally found a way to use this coffee table that I don't hate. Then in the sunroom, I added an aquarium, which is probably not the best place to put fish in real life, but in the game, it's totally fine. I spent a lot more time in this spot than you might think. First, I spent so much effort getting the aquarium into the right spot and raising it up so it was floor to ceiling. Then I decided that I really wasn't sure how to decorate the other side. I tried glass wall panels, windows, anything I could think of. In the end, I decided to keep the glass wall panels, but hated that you could see the platform underneath. And since I was using half walls on the other side, I couldn't change the platform trim at all. It kept reverting to the base platform style. So I used those sleek bathroom rectangle things and put them in the wall, trying to hide the platform. It's not perfect, but it works for what I wanted. Then the floating fish wall art was just a cute little addition to the space. As for decorating the interior of the restaurant, I was definitely leaning more towards an Italian feel. I know that Tartosa isn't specifically inspired by any real-life place, at least from my understanding, but it feels very Italian to me. Those large love-struck portraits also ended up fitting in well, so I put them off to the side, flanking the windows. That truly helped bring a little bit of class to the space and made the rest of the decoration much easier since there wasn't too much space left to decorate. I used those little olive oil bottles, some wall lighting, and some of the more modern-looking wall art from, I think, Dine Out. Then I remembered that the kitchen itself was probably pretty important to work on. I can never remember the exact necessary items for certain events, but I know that I've legitimately added in kitchens to existing builds in the past just to be able to bake a cake because the one that I had my sim bake before the party got left back home when the event started, or my sim got hungry and snuck a piece out of their pockets when I wasn't looking. That sort of thing. The restaurant technically does need a sink, which I think usually gets solved by the bathrooms. And there's specific restaurant stoves from Dine Out that you can use. But there's never an actual need for a fridge. I think that's odd. I decided to add in 2 fridges, a sink, and quite a few cabinets here to make the kitchen look a bit more classy. After that, I just added some plants around and then decided that the little space on the wall where the waiter stand is needed something. So I added that little hall table thing from For Rent. I think it technically is a kind of hall table, but I almost exclusively use it as a kind of makeup table, which won't function as one, so I'm not sure why I go through the effort of pretending in my builds, but whatever. The rest of the landscaping was fairly easy since I had already done some light landscaping earlier. I opted for some really beautiful trees with hanging lights or twinkle lights on them and sized them differently and scattered them around. I also spent some time adding some more of those hanging vine plants that we used on the entrance in various spots. I even added some of the ivy from Cottage Living to one of the walls around a window to help it make it blend in a bit. I have to say, I'm really digging the overall look for this lot, especially because it's kind of different from anything that I've done before and not my usual kind of style. Then I took a small break to add in an actual wedding area to make this work as an actual option for a wedding venue, should you choose. I'm a little worried that it comes across a little bit as an afterthought, but I hope not. This lot has a lot of space behind it, and I even used the tool mod to add a fountain and a tree to it, which might not save if grabbed off the gallery. I'm not sure. However, since there really wasn't much building space here, the aisle and seating is kind of tucked off to the side, but I feel like I did a pretty good job making it look like it's part of the lot and also that space that's behind the lot. Again, you could easily remove this space if you hate it, but I think I might actually have my sim get married here. Then I spent a little bit of time picking out interior wall and floor paint because somehow I just never did until now. I'm not sure if it slipped my mind or I just wasn't really paying attention to the fact that I hadn't done it yet, but I was kind of surprised at how long it took me to actually do it. With that out of the way, I was able to get back to the landscaping. I added a bit more rocks around and sunk some of them down into the ground using Tool to make them blend in easier. Then I also did some light terrain manipulation around to add some complexity to the lot instead of just having it flat like I usually do. Is this the secret to good terrain manipulation? Is this how I get better? Let me know. I think it might be. Then I added some bushes and shrubs and stuff around the lot to fill in some lighter areas. In the back, I didn't love that the other side of that transitionary space that leads to the outdoor dining area was just open on one side. So I added a few of those lighted bushes to kind of hide the fact that it's just open archways. You might not have these in your game, and if you don't, I'm so sorry. You can definitely swap these out for other bushes or hedges or whatever. These actually came in a recent winter event, and I love that we have them, but I also hate that if you don't have them, you just can't get them. I don't know. It's great to have these limited events. In fact, I think there's one happening right now, but it's sad if you maybe weren't playing the game at the time of a past event. Like, you can't change that, so you just miss out on certain items. That also reminds me, Adventure Awaits, the newest expansion pack, officially releases towards the end of next week. If you're thinking of pre-ordering, it does come with a few little extra pieces. I'd really appreciate it if you used my creator code. It gives me a small commission when you use my code, and even though it's unfortunately not a discount code, they did do a small trial run in the past where it did give a discount for you, so there's hope that they'll bring that back. I should also mention that I'm expecting to have early access to Adventure Awaits next week, leading up to the official release. So I'm likely going to be streaming a lot over on my Twitch channel, playing with the pack and just checking things out. So if you're interested, I'd also really be grateful if you went to the link in the description and dropped me a follow over there. No pressure at all. I know Twitch and live streaming isn't everybody's cup of tea, but if you're interested in the pack, it's a good way to help you decide if it's worth ordering. But that's pretty much the end of the speed build. So let's hop into the game and I can give a quick overview tour. So here we are in the game at Scorfano's restaurant, and you have this little walkway to get into the actual restaurant. And we'll just go all the way down. So this is Scorfano's restaurant in the game, and you can see that you just have this little entryway, and it's really nice because there's the seating outside, there's some lighting, and then you can see that right next to the actual entrance, there is the little waiters stand over here, and then the host stand is on the left side, and you have the bar over here, you have the sunroom in this little area, and then you have this balcony that your Sims can get onto, but they can't eat at. You have the bathroom tucked over on the side, and then over here is the restaurant's kitchen. Then coming all the way down here, you have some more dining spots, and you have a little party room over here. Then this back room is this sort of like walkway transitionary room, and I love the way that it came out, especially with the fireplace like kind of tucked in. And then of course back here you have the entire outdoor dining space, and then tucked over to the side is the entrance, like the aisle to the wedding venue. And you can see here that this is the actual end of the lot. So I don't know, if you want to keep this, you can. I think it's a really cute addition, but that is basically it, my friends. Thank you so much for watching. You can grab this build from the gallery with my EA ID, Teknikolour. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on future videos. If you're pre-ordering Adventure Awaits, picking up my wedding stories, or any other Sims packs, please use my creator code, Teknikolour. It's free for you and supports the channel. If you want even more Sims, I also play my Legacy Challenge live over on Twitch. See you in the next one. Bye-bye.